thank you, Shane. Really pleased to have you on this interview because, like the interview I did the other week with Andy, you're one of the guys who really got me into taking it a bit more seriously. So it's great to finally get a chance to properly talk to you rather than just through your live chats on Premieres.
No, that's all right. No, thanks for having me on. That's cool. No, I like what you're doing. It's good stuff. Well done.
Thank you very much. So we'll get into some questions. The first question is, when did you get into doing YouTube and kind of what got you started on it?
So I've always been into producing videos for longer than I've been playing guitar. It was always something that I loved. And back in the early days of the internet, there was never really anywhere to host your own videos. And then one day YouTube popped up and, it was limited to 240p, but it was somewhere where I could post, videos of holidays or vacations overseas or whatever, things, just anything that I wanted to post. I had somewhere that I could actually host the videos, and it was free, which was pretty confusing at the time. And so back in the early days of my channel, it was literally for my band clips, holiday clips, and it was so random. It was just so random back in 2006 when I actually created an account for it. So it just got me into, I remember looking for a product review of a pedal because I wanted to, I was living on a budget, a severe budget, and I was looking for a Behringer Overdrive pedal review, and there were none. There was not one at the time I posted mine. So I bought it for $30 and I posted a video thinking no one's going to watch this, but it ended up getting a lot of views really quickly. And I was like, oh, so people like instrument stuff and guitars and pedals. So that's what kind of pushed the channel to where it is today. It was more gear focused back then than it is now. I try to mix the content up, but that was the light bulb went off people are actually watching these. So I just took a chance and I looked at other pedals and amps and there was nothing. So I just started posting videos in amongst band clips and in amongst travel sort of footage as well. And then I ended up making it obviously more geared towards guitar because InTheBlues was my trio band. I was in a blues trio called InTheBlues Trio. So that's how that started. So that was my band name back then. And it was just a cool name for a YouTube channel. So I left it at that. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
That was pretty much the long-winded version.
Cool. So, okay, in which case, which brings me to quite nicely the second question. If I'm right, this is now your full-time gig now, isn't it, doing YouTube and that sort of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, YouTube's part of my income. It's not all of it, but it's a big part of it. Yeah. So I sort of do YouTube full-time. I have a few channels as well that I'm working on, not just the InTheBlues one anymore. And I've always dabbled with other stuff because I'm not just I don't just obsess about guitars all the time. I've got other interests as well. I love cameras and tech and all kinds of different things, travel, and even though we can't do that at the moment. So yeah, I guess a lot of what I do is centered around a YouTube presence to some extent, but I'm still doing other stuff. I still produce commercials and a couple of videos for people outside of YouTube as well. So yeah, I've done a few little bits and pieces like that. I used to produce a lot of band albums, like that have airplay here in Australia and on a national radio station. So I've done a lot of albums for people as well. And I got a weird sort of skill set. For a long time, I was working full time and doing YouTube, but I knew, back in around 2010 is when I actually started putting in a little bit more effort. And then I think it was around 2014 or 13, somewhere around there, I was kind of getting really sick of the day job. And I thought, I'm going to do both until something happens. And yeah, I ended up working really hard and taking a lot of chances with gear. I was buying and selling pretty much everything you saw on the channel in the early days and borrowing it off friends. And, I'd go to the cash converters or the secondhand shops and buy whatever was there, pedals wise, or if I found a great guitar, I'd review it and keep it if I loved it or just move it on. And that's kind of how the channel grew. I had a pretty great conversation with Google back in the early days. They sort of said to me, I actually got a call, which is unheard of. I don't think they call anybody anymore. And it was from a YouTube. I don't know if they're considered like a consultant or something, maybe something like that. And I was working for a business consultancy at that time. And they basically said, I think your channel's got something about it that will do well if you approach it the right way. And it took me years. I still don't approach things the right way, but I try my best to keep it more personable. I can't watch my videos even 3 years ago because I'm more myself now than I was then, just through being comfortable with it. And yeah, it's kind of it's always evolving. And what was the question again? I forgot what you asked me.
I don't know where I was actually. Oh, is this,
yeah, I think it was just like
gig, yeah.
it is. Yeah, I put a lot of work, time, and effort and money into the channel, and I got great supporters in the subscribers and the Patreon guys as well. It kind of help keep the channel going through tough times. But it's at a point now where it's throughout all these different streams and things I do, it works out pretty well. So, I'm not killing it, but I'm finally, it's taken 4.5 years to get it to a point where I'm like, okay, I think I'll be all right this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty tough, but I'm a pretty self-motivated and driven guy. I think a lot of people think I'm super relaxed, and I am to some extent, but yeah, I know what I want to try and achieve, and I have goals for everything. So I try to tick a lot of boxes. As boring as that sounds, that's one good thing that came out of my last job.
Oh, that's good. I mean, again, talking to Andy the other week, it was that came out. It was that kind of, it is really hard work to make YouTube into a thing. Even doing the stuff that I'm doing, where it's kind of 1 or 2 videos a week, that takes time and it takes commitment and it takes kind of a discipline to do it every week, to make sure you're putting content out there. I mean, I know the old rules were make sure you do it on a regular basis, do it on the same day, the same time. Now it's kind of just make sure you're pushing content out there.
Yeah.
But it takes
I think that it does, but it also, it's about as well as about content. A lot of people who are, and this isn't relating to you by any, I'm not directing this statement at you. I hinted at this over a text message. There's a lot of guys that post a lot of videos that are not very good. Let's just leave it at that. There's no point to them, or they look terrible, or they sound terrible. And if you're a guitar channel, you should have your audio should be the focus, even more so than the video. And if you can't hear something properly and you're posting videos after video, eventually you get a reputation for not putting out quality. And that's what I like about your channel. You're working with what you got. You're starting out strong, and you've been putting out videos to the best of your ability. I see so many channels not make an effort at all, and it kills me. And they always complain, I can't grow. But that's because they've followed none of the best practices. There's actually like a theory. There's a method about this that works. And I've learned a lot with my InTheBlues channel and all the things I did wrong. And I've tried to reapproach like my tech channel with it's actually my tech, you'll laugh, my tech channel is growing faster than my InTheBlues channel.
I've been keeping an eye on that.
It's crazy. I had like 150 subscribers a day there for a while, because I started treating it a little bit differently to my InTheBlues channel, where I was just trying to think more is better. More isn't always better. Sometimes less is better. It's like the old guitar phrasing thing. Not always, if you put something out that makes a statement, not to say my stuff's any good, but you look at, some of the channels that have really grown fast, generally they're either full of great information, they're informative, or they're entertaining, right? So there's a couple of criteria there for people that will grow quickly, or their standard and quality of what they do is exceptional in context to other people that are doing similar things. So yeah, I always think like if you can start strong or develop it as you go and keep it pretty honest, you'll do pretty well.
That's really, really interesting. I'm not going to ask you the next question because it's not relevant to you. It was about what was your day job, but you were an IT consultant.
Oh, I don't mind. Yeah, I was a IT guy, a Microsoft specialist at a big company. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. No, I've done similar. My background is similar, although now I'm in games for business, but totally different track. Which is what my channel was originally about. Yeah.
That sounds fun.
But no, actually, a different question. What got you into guitar in the first place? Because you said you've been sort of in tech longer than guitar. So I'm curious to know when you started, actually.
Oh, I was probably into, like, I was playing music in primary school. 4 to 6, I was playing, they made us play recorder.
Oh, yeah.
And then I found out I could work out guitar a little bit just by transposing some of the melodies of the songs I knew from recorder onto guitar. And then that was maybe 6 months of playing when I was young, maybe a year. And then I stopped playing until basically almost the end of high school. And I moved to Michigan and I worked over there for, I don't know, like 6 months. And there was this guy, Rob, who was playing. I'd already been listening to blues and I loved it, but I hadn't bought an electric guitar. I had an acoustic again by that point, but he played a lot of the songs from the Cradle album. From the Eric Clapton Unplugged album. And
Oh yeah,
I was like, oh, there's a formula to blues. I never knew any of that kind of stuff, and that was a big reason for me to get into it, as well as hearing a lot of great music. I was inspired from it from an early age. I've been listening to a lot of blues for a long time, but the Blues Brothers, I have first watched that when I was, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 or something like that. I don't even remember how young I was. I was pretty young. That was my favorite movie for years, with the Ghostbusters and a few others. And I always loved the music, and I didn't know like it was soul or country or blues or rock blues. They had a lot of different styles in there, and funk and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I ended up just loving the music, and that got me into looking up more about John Lee Hooker, which got me into Van Morrison, which got me into Jimmy Witherspoon, which got me into like all these other guys like Clapton. And so by the time I went over to the States, I already loved the music, and I had a lot of CDs, and I still like all music, but blues was the only one that really sort of hit me in the heart. Like I went, oh, I love the whole play and sing sort of dynamic of saying something, singing something, and then playing something. And Mark Knopfler too was a big part of that. Before that, I was listening to punk and heavy metal and all kinds of stuff. And I love that stuff still, but and funk and everything. Like, just there wasn't a really a style I'd never listened to for whatever reason. But it was a weird combination of a few things. And I remember as we were going home, I was listening to From the Cradle, Eric Clapton's album, This Is in Michigan, going back to the airport. And I was like, this album is so good. And we had it on repeat, and it was a long drive. And I was like, man, this is what I want to do. When I got back, I got an electric guitar. I just turned 19. And that was it. I just put my head down and worked some stuff out. It was also a combination of stuff from coming from a really sporty background, hurting my back and not really being able to walk very well for a while. So, I needed something else to kind of, to sink my teeth into other than sport. So I play guitar and I love it. Kind of worked out really well.
That's cool. I love that you brought up Blues Brothers. That was kind of
the
my.
Best.
I remember. I think we're probably similar ages, and I think my mum and I watched it when I was a kid, and she kind of got me into it. So my dad was into classical music, and my mum was into all sorts of stuff. She loved the Beatles, the Stones. I found an AC/DC LP single that she had on like 7-inch vinyl, all this kind of stuff.
Cool.
And I remember that was the first kind of film and the music in that where I really got into music. And then I kind of didn't listen to much for a long time. And then Nirvana came around and kind of started listening to that. Cool. And a bit similar to you, I was ill when I was 16 for quite a long time. And I couldn't do sport anymore. So I bought a guitar. And so I kind of did that. I didn't play blues at all. Didn't play blues. I played like Green Day, Nirvana, Metallica, all those kind of things. And kept playing that for years and years and years. It's only in the last 3 or 4 years I've actually started playing blues stuff. It's cool. Just sort of tweaked. I'd not play. I've got kids and kind of didn't play for a long time. And then picked up the guitar again and thought, I can't do what I used to do. My hands just not fast enough. The coordination wasn't there. So, but blues, I could do something which sounded great, and it got to the heart quickly without needing to play a million notes per second.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't start it earlier. Well, maybe I haven't made the effort enough either, but I don't feel like I'm naturally fast in my fingers. I can get around a few things that might appear quick, but it's not complicated stuff. Like I watch Robert Baker, or I watch a couple of these other guys like Hans Platz play, and it's just like they got this dexterity that is just amazing to watch. I mean, they can make it feel good too, which is the key. Yeah. But I don't feel like that was never important to me from the style of music that I listened to until I found country music, and I went, oh, these guys, they're Brad Paisley and all that. They're just unbelievable. But speed isn't the be all and end all. I always relate this back to playing live. I got a few friends of mine who can play extremely fast and play the most complex kind of stuff. But people people's eyes kind of glaze over.
Yeah.
It doesn't relate very well. I think that's why BB King and Eric related so well to crowds, other than, you know, BB King's voice and all that kind of stuff. I just mean as a straight up guitar player, you could have a guy come out and shred, which is technically amazing, and it might even sound great or whatever. But that simple approach connected to so many people. And that's why he became one of the best in the world. So, yeah, it was it's not always about speed.
It's applying it to that live situation. So again, something we spoke about a while back, and I hadn't done until last year, was playing live.
Oh,
and
okay, cool.
All the stuff that you kind of do in your room, fuzz pedals being the great example. I spoke about this before. You know, it hit that.
Yeah.
I remember going into the studio with my friends. First time I've been in a band. I mean, I played with guys when I was like 16, and I kind of thought, right, I'm going to go into my lead line, hit the fuzz pedal, my guitar disappeared. It's like,
but that's the strange thing about, I guess, different everybody's perspective online, because, you know, I was playing live before I was doing YouTube, like quite a while before that as well. I wasn't great at it, but I was still gigging, doing the trio thing and all that kind of stuff. So when you say to someone, I don't use fuzz pedals because they don't sound great live, there's usually some experience behind that. And not to say all fuzz pedals sound bad, because they don't. There's some really great ones out there, but I haven't found one I would take and play live that cuts the mix in all the right frequencies. They always have too much bass, or they're just a bit too eclectic. Like there's an upper octave thing going on that I don't like, and it doesn't track well. Or yeah, so no, I totally get it. It's two different things. If you're just tracking at home, the fuzz pedal will probably do the job. But if you're playing out live, you'll click on it and wonder where's the guitar gone.
Yeah. So I just bought a Nobles ODR1, and that's just changed my world. That has just changed my world. It's such a great pedal for everything. It doesn't matter what I'm playing, it sounds amazing. So
yeah. I'll have to check that out. That sounds good.
Yeah, well, totally.
That's an overdrive, right? Like
it's
like a tube screamer kind of thing.
Yeah, except it's got a lot. So the new one has got a bass cut in it. You've got like a little switch inside. You can do the bass cut because it's an all frequency boost that you can then trim a bit. But it's weird. I've got quite a lot of tube screamers and kind of overdrives, and this one seems to sound the fullest without sounding muddy. A bit like the Maxon ones you were showing a while back, where the tone control is usable all the way through the suite. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's no one spot where you go, that sounds awful. Whereas a lot of the tube screamers, when you start pulling the bass down a bit, it starts to sound muddy. And then if you do the bass cut, it just cuts through the mix instantly. So if you've got the opportunity to try one out, definitely do it. I think cool. You especially will really like it with the stuff that you drives you like.
Cool. All right, that might be something on the list. Thanks.
Why not? Okay, so another question. I think we've got questions still. So 2 questions. They're quite hard questions, in as much as the second one will make you think definitely. First one might be a bit easier. What's your favourite guitar that you own at the moment? And I'll say at the moment, today. Yeah,
it does sort of change from time to time. Like I go through phases with guitars, and I got to tell you, if I had to keep one, I'd probably keep my 52 reissue. That might mean it's my favorite out of all of them. I really love the original Tele that I got a while back too, the 50s Fender original Tele. That thing is a beast. I would say they're both of those are pretty much on par, but I would take the 52 over it because I've had it for 11 years. So that would probably be my favorite. I love the PRSSE as well. I think value for money, performance, that thing is just a beast. But I would still take my Telecaster if I was only going to keep one.
Yeah, is that the one with the Joe Barden pickups?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, the thing's been around the world with me, man. I love it.
I must admit, when I hit 40, my wife said to me, "Do you want a new guitar?" So I got you've probably seen it in the videos, that black Telecaster, the Mexican kind of matte black one.
Yeah.
And it was a toss up between that and this PRS you've got. In fact, even the same color that you had, because
cool.
And it just came down to the fact that, and this is an interesting one, and you've had this with guitar shops as well. I went into the guitar shop, one of the most popular guitar shops in the world, because it's my most local one, and the setup was so bad on all their guitars, I just couldn't. I just couldn't. And even to the point, there was some now I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here, but there are some by Chapman. This
Mm-hmm.
might give you a clue as to the shop. And
Yeah.
even those, I mean, the tone control nearly fell off. Literally, the whole control unit, not just the knob, the whole thing wasn't fixed. The PRS, the controls weren't fixed properly. The action was about 8 miles high. And
wow.
It's one of those things where you kind of go in, and I know it's a great guitar, but I played it and absolutely hated every second of having it in my hand. I went to another shop, and which sounds stupid, the PRS, but if that initial reaction, and then I went to, and I've not liked Telecasters. I've never liked Telecasters. And I went into another shop and I saw the Redline Black Noir one. And I thought, oh, all right, everyone loves Telecasters. All the blues guys, and there's lots of Telecaster stuff. So I thought I'll pick it up. And instant, just fell in love. That was it.
Cool.
I had to have that guitar, and it was set up nicely. They'd spent that 10 seconds it takes just to make sure it was tuned and not even tuned, just the intonation was right, and the action was a tiny bit lower. And I just think, it's a weird one when you kind of look at those, because the PRS had always wanted that. The Swamp Ash Green always wanted it.
Yeah.
And
should try another one, because that sounds pretty strange. It sounds like they've just maybe got too many people coming through the shop and too many people pulling the controls apart or something. But mine, I still haven't done anything to it other than change strings.
Really?
Yeah, it played perfectly off the shelf. So yeah, that was my experience. And I think that helped me decide on it. Like I borrowed it for a video because it was the first lefty they ever made. So I borrowed it from my local shop here. Took it back the next morning, went back the following morning and bought it. So I was like, man, I don't want anyone owning this. So yeah, look, you do find that with a lot of shops that have hands-on, things aren't always going to be right. And I don't think that'd be any exception to that, you know.
No, and it's one of those things. It was funny because I'd always wanted a PRS, and I don't know, it was just being almost like a sulky brat at 40 years old. You know, it's that kind of, I don't like this, it doesn't work.
No, you got to get what you like too. And you might find it's not right for you either. Like, I had no expectations for it. I was keen to try it because I'd never played an SE before.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, for my standard of playing, I couldn't justify, because in Australia the equivalent PRS is about 8,000. Those are about 1,200.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I got a good deal on it too. But yeah. So for me, I can't justify spending that amount of money on a guitar. It's just not worth it, you know.
Yeah, maybe when I hit my 50th birthday, I can go for a PRS.
Yeah.
Okay, so in which case, hopefully this is a harder one, although actually, judging by some of your previous videos, this may be an easy one for you to answer, actually. Your favourite bit of gear? Pedals?
Probably my Marshall.
My
Marshall DSL 40 with the Texas Heat. To me, that's the ultimate live tone. It's got the best 3D projection out of any of my amps. The Blues Deluxe is like my classy tone. If I want a really traditional blues tone and I want to run my pedals into it, that's the amp. But if, I could take any of my guitars, plug it into my Marshall and do a gig just by using the foot switch or my volume control that comes with it on my guitar. I don't need anything else. It is such a great amp. I would say that's pretty much my favorite piece of gear for playing live. And it's funny, every time I use that amp, everybody comments on it. We go to a jam night just up the hill here, or we were pretty much every Sunday. And, every time that amp comes out, even the owner, he goes, man, that amp sounds good. It just stands out compared to everything else. And, some amps sound really great at home. You take them out and you play them live. And much like the fuzz pedal, they disappear because the bass frequencies are taking up some of that space, or the drums are louder than the amp. That amp will peel the paint off the walls. It's loud enough, but it sounds great. And since changing the speaker, it's almost like I've got my Fender amp with my pedals. That's how the Marshall amp sounds to me, just plugging straight into it with a bit more attitude and sort of kick. But yeah, I would say the Marshall's probably the thing I've enjoyed buying the most. The Flying V would be up there as well. I'm loving that at the moment. But yeah, the Marshall would be the thing that stands out to me the most at the moment. It's just the gift that keeps giving. I love it.
I knew you were going to say that as well, because having watched the videos, it's so obvious that thing, you just bonded with it instantly.
So good. And what's funny, right? I tried the prior version the year before or 2 years before that, I tried that DSL and I hated it. And I was with a friend of mine who's a much better guitar player than me, and he hated it as well. So I was like, oh, well, we'll leave that in the shop. And then 2 years later, or whatever it was, plugged into that one, and it was like, oh, that's the tone. It was a bit bright, but I thought I'll be able to work this out. The stock speaker in there is great if you want a classic rock sound and you don't mind a bit of extra treble, but I don't like sort of taking people's heads off at a gig. I'd prefer to have a bit more of a rolled out tone. That was my only criticism of the Marshall. It was a really, really bright amp.
Yeah.
You could set it up so it wasn't quite as bright, but taking that Celestion out, putting the Eminence in was like night and day different. And it took me 2 different speakers to get the right combination, but I got it. Yeah, that Texas heat that lives in there. I'm sure people think I'm sponsored by Eminence, but I love their speakers. I'm not, by the way, but I've had any amp I've taken out the stock speaker and put a good quality Eminence speaker in has transformed that amp. Same with my Blues Deluxe. I got a video coming up of that actually next week. Re-reviewing it because I never reviewed the second Blues Deluxe that I owned. I sold one that had a different speaker in there, and then I bought another one because I missed it and loaded it with this Swamp Thing speaker, and it was as good as a 2-rock at like a third of the price. So yeah, it's, the speaker swap makes the biggest difference in my opinion than swapping anything else in the amp. So I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to speakers. I'm a huge fan.
It's this thing though. It's things that actually make a difference to the tone because, I've got a huge pedal board full of stuff, and I've got a Boss Katana, and so I'm always chasing the tone that I want. But because if I'm playing live, I tend to be playing kind of an open mic night, or I'm playing in the studio with my friends. I never know what amp I'm going to have. So I make sure that the pedals kind of get me anything I want on a flat EQ amp, basically. That's how I'm set up.
Cool.
And the Boss Katana is great for kind of messing around at home and creating weird, wonderful effects. But live, if I'm taking that anywhere, it's purely just a flat EQ with a clean channel, and then my pedals going into it, because I know what I'm going to get that way. And if I can't take the amp, I know if I put it into the one at the open mic night we go to, it's always a Blues Junior, and I'm kind of, I put everything through. The last time we played, I had this what was it, the Boss DS1 was my main game pedal.
Oh yeah.
Oh god. So for me it sounded horrible. So I was right next to the speaker. The speaker's kind of here or there somewhere, it's just slightly in front.
Oh man.
And it sounded horrible. And I went out, I was talking to the guys afterwards, and they go, oh, it sounded fine. Everyone thought it sounded fine. It was just me who hated it, and I kind of turned it on. I'm messing around. You can see in the video, I'm like messing around with the tone control on the guitar, trying to take some of the treble off it. And it was at that point I realised the audience just don't care.
Yeah, they don't most of the time.
Yeah.
As long as they're not all musos, they're the only people that care. But I've always gone for consistency with my sound. And before I mentioned that my Marshall without any pedals reminds me of my Fender amp with my pedals.
Yeah.
Even though it takes away from the Marshall tone, it's my sound. Like I love the fact that I can plug into almost any amp now and get a sound that works. I don't care if it's a digital modeling amp. I'll use my pedal board into it, or a solid state amp, or I've done gigs through other people's solid state amps with my pedal board, and it sounded unreal. Like just tone wise, I'm like, oh, my pedals are sorted. I know exactly how to. I think a lot of people don't realize the sound is in the head. First and foremost, you got to have that ideal tone. And I always found when my tone was bad, I played distracted. I was always like, oh, I want to adjust something. But if I can walk into a gig, plug in and go within a half a minute, that's my goal. Then I don't have to worry about my tone. I might go over and just edge up the volume or change the treble depending on the room slightly. But my goal is just to play more and forget about the gear more. Like all I want to be able to do is plonk my board on the ground in anybody's amp. I think I've had the luxury of playing a lot of amps over the years too, and a lot of pedals. So I know probably how to get the most out of them. But yeah, I think consistency is the key. If you can say, take your pedal board of 15 pedals down to 5, that'll serve you better long term, because it'll be less option paralysis. Yeah, I always find like anytime I keep my board as practical as I can. And then there's sometimes I find a new distortion. I'm like, oh, I'd love to take that out. So I bought a new pedal board just to stack one extra pedal on because everything fits perfectly the way it is on my small board. So I buy this big board and I take it out and I play it live. And the live's the best test with any gear, amps, pedals, whatever. If it doesn't work live, you end up ripping it off, throwing it in the cupboard or selling it. That's how it is for me. So I always end up just keeping it simple. Now I know what works. And I've never found a distortion pedal that I like more than 2 overdrives stacked.
Yeah, I keep hearing that.
I've never found that. I always feel like they're too scooped or they're too bass heavy or they're just not, I don't have enough 3D projection. I've tried to love distortion pedals and I can't stand them.
I think for me, and this is drifting way off, but I think for me, the thing I've got is because I play in a covers band, so I need to have a slightly more flexible set of tones because I'm playing BB King and the next song will be Bon Jovi or Metallica or something. So I do have to, I've got like an overdrive and a distortion and a fuzz that comes and goes a little bit. It's got a mid control, so it's all right.
I tell you what, rip that distortion pedal off when you get your another overdrive and try both of your overdrives together. And I guarantee it'll have more throw. I don't know what it is. I something I've seen time and time again, but I think a lot of people don't realize like, how can I put it? Like I won't buy a pedal that has too many options. I always feel like there's certain brands out there that put way too many controls on their stuff because it doesn't sound good to start with.
Toggle switch for everything.
Yeah, toggle switches or too many controls. Like a dirt pedal doesn't really need more than 4 pots. 3 ideally. And if it doesn't sound good with everything at 12 o'clock, get rid of it. And they don't always stack well together. Yeah, this is another thing that pedal companies never tell you. And, you know, I did a series years ago called Will It Stack or something like that, where I take 2 random pedals and try to see if it worked together. And a lot of the time it didn't work. So some of the pedals that sound great on their own don't always sound great when you're pushing something into it or pushing that into something else. I think a volume boost pedal is one of the most underrated pedals anyone can have on their board. Yeah. A volume boost is as good as a great overdrive, you know, either before or after your dirt pedal. I always found like if you love your distortion tone or overdrive tone and you just want to be louder, put it after your distortion or overdrive, or before gives you a little bit of a boost but more saturation. And yeah, you know, it's just a great effect that no one uses.
No, actually, I've got a clean boost after the gain stages because I think.
Cool.
And it is purely for that reason. The other one that is really underutilized, I find, 2 actually volume pedals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you've got one, I find they're really, really handy just to play around in live, and EQ pedals. Because if you don't want to sort of mess around with, you get all these sort of clever treble boosts and everything else, but an EQ pedal with just a slightly different mid push can do as much as anything else. But
absolutely,
it lets you adjust for if you are playing on somebody else's amp or you're not quite sure of the setup. That EQ pedal just changes everything for you.
Yeah,
but it's another pedal. It's one more pedal on the board.
Yeah, I don't tend to use them at all anymore. I
get my saying in the video actually.
Yeah. They're great for an amp that doesn't sound great to sound better. Like, or if it's a really shrill amp, you can back out the treble or add more treble. Like I used to have the little Bugera amplifier, little V5 Infinium. That needed an EQ pedal to give it a bit more tops or to take out a little bit of low end to sort of compensate. Sometimes it's more about what you're taking out of the amp than it is about what you're adding. But that amp needed a little bit more treble and a little bit more bass. But I always think like, if your amp needs an EQ pedal to sound good, there's something not right with the amp because it should sound great. I don't mean yours again either, but just in general, like for me to put an EQ pedal on my board, I'd rather walk over to the amp and turn up the treble. You know, what I'm trying to get at is like people don't exhaust their options enough, and they think the pedal's going to help when it could just be a settings thing or a volume thing. Like especially people with valve amps, I say, I've seen comments like, I've got this amp, but I put that pedal and it doesn't sound good. How loud have you got the amp up? Oh, it's bedroom level. No, get out and crank it up to 7 and see how it sounds. So, there's all these, so many variables like with tone. And EQ pedals will help, especially at lower volumes too. Like if you got your amp you're playing at home and you got a valve amp of some description, you can't quite get it to where you want it. An EQ pedal is going to give you way more flexibility in that situation too. But yeah, I just don't feel the need to use them anymore. I pick the pedals that give me that 3D sort of punch that I'm looking for, especially when I play live. It's funny because we recently put that jam video together with all the guys.
Oh, it's brilliant.
I had so many emails like, oh, how did you record that? You know, from some of the guys. I was like, oh, I just mic'd up my amp, you know, that's as loud as I could get it at home without the cops coming over. So I recorded that at like gig volume with 2 mics and my live pedal board. So I don't, for me, adding an EQ pedal to that chain isn't really going to change much. It's probably just going to overcomplicate it a bit. So I've just stayed clear of that. I think I'm a very minimalist kind of guy when it comes to pedals. Now I don't need that many to get the sound I'm looking for. I just know which ones work. And then I get 2 of those.
Okay, so a couple of fun ones for you now. And this one you've touched on in some of your sort of Q&A sessions, but for my viewers, what's the worst bit of gear you've reviewed?
There's 3 that equally suck. There's 2 that there's 3 that come to mind. There's 2 that equally suck. The Fret Zealot was the first one. This is a thing that there's a strip of LED lights that you stick all over your favorite guitar's fretboard, and once you go to take it off, it rips and tears in it. So you basically have to put it on a guitar you never want to take it off of. So that it's just a strip of LED lights, shows you the scales. You can learn solos for those who don't know what it is. It tore. The first one I had ripped in my first review, and I didn't upload that video, and Philip McKnight did one, and his tore as well, right? Yeah. So I was like, maybe I'll add my bad experience into my final review, which is what I did, because I thought, oh no, maybe it was something I did wrong. So that's the first one that I get it. It would work for some people with a guitar that they're not that precious about, but then you're forced to play a guitar you might not love. It's not as much fun as playing a nice guitar that you don't want to stick something like this on and have trouble getting rid of it and ruin it. The second one is the Jam Stack, which was the world's first attachable guitar amplifier. I just could not get that thing to work. And the whole thing is just the biggest gimmick I've ever seen. It's like, I think brands sometimes think, oh, what can we come up with that hasn't been done? Oh, how about we have an amp that we can clip onto a guitar? Can't they just use that wireless Bluetooth amplifier? No, let's stick it on the guitar. So it's heavier than portable amplifiers. So there's a brand called Nuix. They make an amp called a BT Lite, which is a little practice amplifier. It's Bluetooth, but you can just plug into it. You don't need your phone or you can get an app for it and do all that kind of stuff. But that is so much better sounding than the Jam Stack. I just could not get that thing to work, and it's unnecessary. Look, this is my opinion on that. The third thing on this list would be this deflection system, which was a $700 piece of plastic that you put in front of your amplifier that aims to stop the blizzard of nails, but still giving you the spread of sound. They actually kind of work to some extent, but for $700 for a piece of Perspex, or I think they're like 500 euros or something, they're so expensive. They're like, I get what they're trying to do, and I just didn't feel like it added any value. And I'd heard those things live for about 12 months. Every month or so, my friend would be like, here, review this. And I'd be like, not interested. And eventually I said, all right, I'll do it. And I just was shocked at the price of them. If they were $100 or $50, I'd go, that's not so bad. But yeah, that was a piece of kit that didn't really make a whole lot of sense I just didn't feel like, for the price. It was so expensive, and it didn't justify what you were getting out of it, in my opinion, at least anyway.
It's funny because I've seen a few reviews of that as well, actually. Quite a lot of guys were doing them a few months back, and I remember saying to one of my good friends, he's a luthier, and I said to him, do you reckon you can make one of these? He goes, yes. How much would it cost you? £5, £6 maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's something which always interests me, is the value you get for certain things. Because you look at some, this is why Donna always amazes me, because in the mix, their pedals sound pretty much the same as things 10 times the price. It might not sound as good in your bedroom on your own with your headphones or whatever it might be, but actually in the mix, it doesn't make that big a difference as having a £300 pedal as having a £20 pedal.
No, you're not really paying the difference in the price. You're paying for how it's built and the people that put the R&D into it. I mean, it's no shock that a lot of the Chinese companies or wherever they're made are cloning, pedals that are much more expensive. So you're not really going to hear a difference. what you're going to see is one might last you 3 or 5 years, one will last you 20 years. I mean, look at Boss pedals. They just keep going strong, 20 years later.
My one is the Klon. I mean, I love the sound of a Klon, but the prices
it's a complicated
of those
circuit.
Things.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Christ. So some of those, and you do go, I can see why people use clones. And when people do the side-by-side reviews, it's tough. It's tough when you do a blind test on them, what the difference is.
Yeah. The best Klon that isn't a KTR or a Centaur is made by a company called Shelley, which starts with a C. It's like Cheellee or something like that. It's a weird spelling. They're based in Orange City, Florida. He makes the best handmade pedals, and they're $100 US for a handmade pedal in Florida. The only difference is you get I think there's a toggle switch that changes the high end frequency a little bit because some people find them a bit bright, but that's the best Klon style pedal you can get while it's still being handmade. I would take that over my old KTR, which is an official Klon. It just works. It's really great. So there's some good options out there. I mean, I've played pretty much all of them. I think I did a video with 7 Klons in it at one point or something like that. It really isn't much of a muchness, but the best value for money when I compare it to like Electro Harmonics, where their parts aren't very good for what they're charging nowadays. It used to be, the Soul Foods sound great and they look cool. And I bought one as soon as they came out, but they're just not built to the same standard as like any of the other brands or even some of the Chinese-made companies' pedals. They're just not. They're really poorly made. Like the pots in the Kalen stuff, the potentiometers that you turn have steel shafts. In a lot of the Electro Harmonics pedals, they're plastic.
Yeah.
And they'll break as soon as you drop them. So, Shelley make the best clone by a mile. For that extra $30, you're going to get, or $20, whatever it is now. It's light years ahead. It's such a great pedal. So his stuff's great. He makes an Odie, which is another really cool overdrive.
Okay, so where are we? Oh, that's just a cool one. Right, so what was the bit of gear or the guitar that got away? The one you wish you hadn't given back from a review, or just you kind of saw and someone else got it?
I was in Jacksonville, Florida one year, and I played this beautiful custom shop Lefty Strat that was used on the wall of Guitar Center. It was right up the top. It's a Lefty, slightly relic, nothing too over the top, just looked like an old guitar. And that would probably be the one I should have bought, and it would have ticked all the boxes long term. I'm really looking for guitars now I'm going to keep long term as opposed to fillers. Yeah. I'm writing an article about this because I really feel like I made this mistake so many times, getting this Strat and that Strat and this Strat, instead of just getting the one that I could have justified and also made the most out of without going too crazy financially too. And it would be the guitar that wouldn't be replaced. So that's how I'm kind of looking at it right now. It was just a beautiful black relic Strat that it was beautiful. I should have picked it up, but it was my second day there, getting into it on my trip away, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't spend that amount of money. It was only like, I think our dollars were pretty much parity at that point. So it wasn't that expensive considering it'd be 3 times the amount here. I should have probably have got it, but I didn't. That would probably be the main thing I could think of. I don't really have a lot of buyer's remorse when it comes to getting rid of stuff. I usually sell stuff for a reason. And I usually remind myself why I sold it if I see another one, and I start thinking, oh, maybe I should get another one. But nah, not anymore.
Cool. Okay, so 2 things left. Hopefully quickies for you. Worst experience as a YouTuber?
That's an interesting question. I think back to when I first left my job and not having that regular, it's sort of maybe a weird answer, but I think I love it, right? I really love what I do. I think it's maybe a twofold thing. Taking the jump from full-time IT work to trying to make YouTube work was a pretty scary experience. So trying to pursue a dream of being able to work for myself and, later on setting up other stuff was a bit of a pipe dream in a way, but I stuck to my guns, and I think I turned that into something that's kind of working okay. But I also think one of the biggest problems people have inherently is trying to find things about someone they think is accurate when it isn't. And I I can't stand comments that kind of make the assumption, you know, there's some sort of incentive for me other than obviously getting views and all that behind the scenes. I think what I would consider the worst kind of, and I'll probably see more of these come up on my channel now, the worst kind of criticism isn't, I don't like you playing, I can't stand your face or whatever. I don't care about any of that, right? That doesn't bother me. I've seen it and heard it all. But I think the worst kind of comments are those that kind of undercut your integrity.
Yeah.
And that's probably the worst thing that I think I've seen personally and towards other YouTubers, when people attack them for reasons that they have no information about. And I'm not saying that I've really been attacked, because I haven't, but I always see comments come up on forums like, oh, you know, oh, here's a video by this guy. I was probably getting paid, you know, $1,000 for the video. That's not the case, right? But that's the narrative that people assume, because other YouTubers are getting paid $1,000 a video. You know, I'm not a pro guitar player, but I'm good at what I do. I've learned how to take my skills in all these different areas and make it work. It's through hard work, you know, like it's not just, yeah, money's pouring in from everywhere, or you know, people are going out of their way. I've got a team of people to help me. It's just not the case, right? So I think, you know, when people take a shot at people's integrity and they don't know you, whether it's me or you or Tone King or any of these other guys, I really feel like that's pretty much, I know what it is. It's usually the people that are taking those shots of having a bad day, or they're maybe not happy with their own situation for whatever reason. I think that's a big part of it. But I really feel like there's nothing that's really been on YouTube that's affected me badly. Yeah. And that's like a small thing in a way as well, because I don't bite to the 0.1% of those comments that I see. I don't even look for them either anymore, but 99.5% of what I see on my channel is always positive. And I try to put out a positive vibe. Yeah, I just feel like when general commentators take a shot at someone when they don't know someone is a pretty bad thing. Like, whether they make videos about people, thankfully, I've never had videos made about me, but I've seen other people comment on other YouTubers and they don't know them, nor do they know their situation, but the bandwagons can get pretty strong.
And there were some pretty big ones recently.
Yeah, it's never affected me. I don't participate in the bandwagons of bashing anybody. I don't publicly bash anybody on YouTube. I try not to get involved in any of it. You know, if you go back to 2006, anything I've critiqued about other YouTubers has been more on a professional level than a personal attack about their integrity or whatever. So I try not to get involved in any of that. But yeah, I just don't like those bandwagons, and thankfully I haven't seen any come my way, and there won't be, because I got nothing to hide.
I'm going to start now. That's it. I'm going to make my job now. I'm going to create a video. This is going to get edited to hell.
Yeah. What about yourself though? You got to answer this too, because like I don't really feel like there's much of a, you know, I work for myself. I love what I do. I don't see it as a chore, so I'm happy doing what I do. So
I've not really had a worst experience yet, thankfully. I think, I've had negative comments. Funny enough, the biggest commentary I've had in the last few months is about this hat. I've got somebody just attack me for wearing a hat. But I think people not understanding how it all works, that annoys me a little bit. And again, that assumption, and I had this in the video game industry. And I think when we saw, the biggest time I saw it was the Rev G3. That, you remember when the purple Rev G3 pedal came out? And 30 YouTubers came out with the same video on the same day.
Yeah.
And it was that, they're all getting paid to do it on the same day. But it was under embargo. And they all tried to get the video out at exactly the moment they were allowed to get the video out.
That's how they wind it up. They do the same in other industries as well.
Yeah, and the video game industry is terrible for it. You know, you're not allowed to I used to get sort of gag orders from companies because you weren't allowed to put the video out until the day after the game was released, because the game was crap and they didn't want any reviews out, you know? So we had my when I was in the video games, it was a lot bigger, and I was back in website days before YouTube, and you know, you'd get companies going at you saying you're not allowed to review, you're not even allowed to speak about our products because you said something bad about us. So you're not allowed to review anything ever again. So I think from a YouTube perspective, I'm too young in the industry to have had anyone slag me off too badly.
Yeah.
I I've got trolls occasionally, and I have fun with them at the moment because it's something to do. You know, I call them out on Instagram occasionally, but thankfully I've not had. I think same as you though. I find it depressing when I see there's a particular YouTuber who gets an awful lot of stick at the moment because he's very successful, made a few mistakes along the way by the sound of it, and everyone seems to think they know him on a personal level, and he has been attacked and attacked and attacked. And yeah, I find that miserable.
It's just there's better things to focus your time on. Yeah, absolutely. I don't get invested in. I remember getting asked about it on a couple of different things on live streams, and I won't even reply. I'm like, I'm not interested.
No.
Like, find people the bandwagon thing is pretty full on. You'll never. One of the things I don't do is ever sign agreements for video secrecy. Like, I had a company contact me. They wanted me to review their amp. And they said, "Oh, we need you to sign this thing before we show you what it is." I said, "I'm not interested. Thanks. See you later." Within like 10 minutes, they replied, they're like, "Oh, all right, you don't have to sign it, but just don't tell anyone." I'm like, "What is this thing?" So they showed me. I was like, "Not interested. Thanks." Like, I won't tell anybody. I didn't never sign those NDAs or anything. There's one item I've signed for that was sent to the house. They said, "Keep it. You're obliged to keep it for a year because we're sending it to you." I said, "All right." That's the one time I've done that. Otherwise, and that didn't affect my review. The review is completely separate. But they said you can't just turn around and sell it. That was just something on their behalf. I understand because there'll be a lot of people. Actually, I got a better answer for that. The worst thing that's happened to me on YouTube. Someone tried to steal my identity to get gear sent to them for free.
No way.
Yeah, in Chicago. So from all the way from Chicago, I got an email from Brian Wampler, and he said, "Have you moved to Chicago?" I was like, "No." He goes, "Someone's saying that they're you and they can't spell." So we realized it wasn't you pretty quickly. So can you send me the email? So I wrote to the guy, said, "I've just called the Chicago Police Department. Expect a call. Expect a knock at your door." Because that's illegal, right? You can't do that.
All right, so flip side of that, and we'll finish on a really good positive. What's been the absolute highlight of your YouTube career? And you've got a long list to look back on now.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff. I'm not the most social kind of guy. So I think one of the highlights for me was this recent jam I put together with the guys. Like, I was thinking about that the other day. That was, not only did I get some of my favorite YouTube players, I got some of my favorite guitar players in the world on there as well. There's Rafael Nasta from Argentina. He's played with Josh Smith, Chris Kane, Kirk Fletcher. He's a monster. He's just as good as all those guys. And he's the go-to guy if you tour that part of the world. Like, he's the backing band. And, he might not be the biggest YouTuber, but I don't care. He's like one of my favorite guitar players. Yeah. Michael Wagner from Germany, absolute monster guitar player. When I got to see him play live a few years ago in Germany, I was stunned how great he was. He got up and he's a little guy. He's like my height or shorter. And he commanded the stage. As soon as he got up, it was like, just tasty licks and great playing. And having guys like Andy on there as well, who I was lucky enough to meet, just really nice guys. Kafir. That's pretty close to the highlight for me, like, was getting all these guys, in one video. And I've got other friends in the guitar community that I know may be better than some of them, but they weren't that style of player.
It's what you
like,
wanted
they weren't
as
right.
Well.
They weren't right for the video. Yeah, there's definitely guys that I speak to a lot, but I knew they were more talkers than players, or the music style wasn't what they're sort of into. So I didn't invite certain people. And I also extended the invite to a lot of other people that people might also be surprised about, but I either didn't hear back or they weren't available. So yeah, there was going to be 2 or 3 more people on there, but it just didn't work out. But that was pretty cool. I always feel like the music gets forgotten between the gear. And every Sunday I'm going out. Well, not right now, obviously, but yeah, generally, every Sunday I'd be going out and playing live. And irrespective of YouTube, when I wind up the channel in a few years or whatever the case may be, or if it keeps going, if I end up not doing it again, I'm still going to be playing live. Like, for me, that's something and that I'll always be doing. And that jam clip for me was, I must have watched it. I remember editing that for 6 hours, thinking this is so much fun. I never really enjoy the editing process as much as what I used to, because it's just like, I got to get it done, you know. But that put us, every time someone would send their clip in, I just started laughing, and everyone was so unique and different. Like we had Michael Palmisano, we had Brett Kingman, you know, Texas Blues Alley, Anthony was on there. Just lots of great players that were all different, and putting that all together and finding the common ground. Hans Platz as well, who's a phenomenal guitar player. He's so good. Rick and I were watching it here on the couch before it went live, because he was here shooting his part, and I showed him all the other parts, and he was like, "This is unreal." I said, "Yeah," and I'm kind of like a little disappointed it didn't take off. I really thought that video would have gone crazy.
Oh, it's brilliant. Because I mean,
yeah,
I was watching it the other day. You know, there's so much stuff to steal from that video.
Yeah. I'm gonna work out Michael Wagner's parts, because he plays a lot. He's like a refined and much better version of how ideally I'd like to sound. He's got it. He's got it all. He's got the execution. He's got great tone. He's got the feel, but his execution is like, on that video, in my opinion, he's just so tight with his playing. But it's all stuff I can already hear in my head and translate to my hands. So if I sit down and try to work out some of that, I'll get it pretty quickly. I just won't be able to play it as well. And you're right. There's bits like Rafael Nasta's got that diminished thing that he throws in. It was just so much fun. So for me, that was one of the big highlights for me. I don't go to product shows. I don't really do that and interview companies. I think I've interviewed 2 companies on a Guitar Search Saturday video once or something. That was about it. I'm just not interested in being that sort of YouTuber. I don't want to. I still want to keep focus on the guitar playing part of it more than I want to just be a spokesperson for people in that capacity. It's not really who I am. No, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Shane. Been really, really enjoyed this. It's been fantastic getting to chat to you properly.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate your time, and hopefully there's some conversation out of this, however long we've been talking for, that you can use. And if not, we'll do it again when I'm a little bit more coherent.
Maybe 2 videos out of this, but no, it's been really, really interesting to talk to you. I'll put a link to your channel in the description below, just so people have got it if they haven't already got it. If you are on my channel at all, you should already be subscribed, because I've mentioned Shane a number of times now, so you should be subscribed by now.